This may be controversial, but I don't care. You know those super gatekeepy people? Basically the equivalent of accusing someone of being a poser because they're not as much of a fan as you. They've known about it longer than you, so they feel in some way superior. It's awful, right? That was me. I'm Micah, a licensed therapist, and here we like to talk about horror. I've moved past the gatekeeping behavior because it doesn't help anyone at all, and all it is just me being difficult. With Terrifier 3 on the horizon, I thought this might be fun. This is why I think that Art the Clown is a horror icon. With the release and reception of Terrifier 2, I believe that my own suspicion about the Terrifier franchise has been confirmed. I knew this was headed somewhere, not to toot my own horn. And sure enough, the Terrifier franchise has taken off. Prior to Terrifier 2, I feel like being a Terrifier fan felt like a little secret group of people who knew that something big was coming, but no one else knew yet. Anyway, the explosion of the Terrifier franchise just means more support and funding for the movies, so I accept that. You see, some of my favorite villains are the kind that have personality, or something that resembles personality. Not so big on the Jasons and the Michaels and the masked characters that you don't really get to know their personality in some way. They're just a killing machine. Nothing wrong if that's your thing, just not mine. How neat is it that someone cannot utter a single word and you still have a good idea of the personality of that character? And while I know that there can be some exceptions to this, and there is in the case of Art, I think that there are some characters that can only be played by one actor. Mike Giannelli? I hope that's right. Sorry if it's not. So he was the first one to portray Art the Clown in All Hallows Eve, which is an anthology, the first introduction of Art. But let's be real, Mike walked so that David could run. So my personal journey with Terrifier began during the beginning of the pandemic. Horror was part of my maintaining sanity plan. Found Terrifier and immediately knew that something was brewing. Loved it immediately. From the homage to slasher of the 80s to the personality of Art, you know, the discomfort and emotional ability that he just displayed. Perfection. It's totally okay if you disagree with that. Remember, everybody has their own opinion. So after watching Terrifier, I went back and watched All Hallows Eve because I was like, gotta see where this came from. Dug it, minus the middle story in the anthology. I feel like I'm not alone in this. I mean, aliens? Anyway, it was a delightful little jump start to the existence of Art. So in Terrifier, Art the Clown developed into more than just a scary, creepy, violent clown. So let's do a little assessment of Art because therapist. We don't know a whole lot about Art's origin. Maybe we'll learn more in Terrifier 3, but I will say that I'm actually totally cool without knowing. Do what you do, Damien. I'm along for the ride. Art has some of the most twisted antisocial traits. And when I'm talking about antisocial traits, I'm talking about the kind of traits that contribute to what is commonly known as psychopathy or being a psychopath. Clinically, this is known as antisocial personality disorder, which I will refer to as ASPD. So look at this. Let's look at this criteria. And just before we get started, if any of this sounds familiar to you, you feel like you know anybody that may have this going on, seek some additional support and help. I also want to say that just because he may fall into this realm and have this criteria doesn't mean that all people with ASPD are going to behave this way. This is a fictional character with supernatural stuff going on, so keep that in mind. ASPD is characterized by a pervasive pattern of disregard for others and the violation of their rights. This usually has to be present since age 15 and is indicated by 3 or more of the following. So we have failure to conform to social norms concerning lawful behaviors, such as performing acts that are grounds for arrest. Second, deceitfulness, repeated lying, use of aliases, or conning others for pleasure or for profit. I can see how Art could be considered deceitful. 3, impulsivity, failure to plan ahead. Our man, impulsive. Irritability and aggressiveness, often with physical fights or assaults. We already know. 5, reckless disregard for the safety of self or others. 6, consistent irresponsibility, failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor monetary obligations. I feel like we could argue about this one. I mean, Art pays for stuff. But how did he get that money? Number 7, lack of remorse. Being indifferent to or rationalizing your actions that may harm other people. So another criteria is the person has to be at least 18 years of age or older, which we can assume with Art. He's probably like way older than that. We also need to have evidence of conduct disorder, typically starting before age 15. Again, we don't have his history, so we don't know that. We can kind of assume this may be a pervasive pattern because these movies take place a year apart. So, you know, I feel like that's somewhat pervasive pattern. We don't have enough of a timeline to really confirm for sure. So it's not only that Art doesn't feel remorse, But there's also some like pure sadism there. He's really enjoying himself a lot, but not sexually, which is good. It takes away a disturbing factor that could be there if he was, but it somehow makes it creepier. Like he's just playing around. But that alone isn't just what's going on with him. So he's got some supernatural things going on, as we determine, getting shot and coming back and all that good stuff. Supernatural shit aside, we know that he is hallucinating a vision of the little pale girl. I think there may be some psychosis involvement, but we don't totally know. So here's what I'm thinking. If we look at a disorder such as schizoaffective disorder, then we may be able to see a couple of pieces of what could also be going on with Art. Now, I think the ASPD is primary, and I think that we have a lot more evidence of that. This one is just one that I would want to consider or rule out should I be diagnosing him in real life. Schizoaffective is kind of like a combination of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. So it has features of the psychosis and the things involved in schizophrenia, but then also has some of the mood fluctuation lability of bipolar disorder. Delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech. And so that is speech that is easily derailed or incoherent. Maybe I'm just assuming, but if Art did talk, I feel like it would be a little disorganized. So grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior, which we see in very quick spurts. We see the negative symptoms, the flat affect, flat expressions, lack of motivation. And we don't see a whole lot of the negative symptoms because Art is very motivated. It's very quick when he has those moments. So that's one reason why I'm like, all right, this isn't 100%, because these tend to be patterns that you can see the cyclical nature of them. But then also including in the schizoaffective disorder, there's going to be some mood episodes which lasts for an uninterrupted period of time, which we can't totally confirm. Delusions or hallucinations for 2 or more consecutive weeks without mood symptoms during the life of the illness. So we have hallucination confirmation, but we don't know how long this has been happening. And the symptoms are not caused by substance use. And as far as we know, Art is a completely sober maniac who might have some mommy issues. Because come on, they pretty much all do. Clowns are inherently creepy for people, but smash some mime behaviors in with that, and then you're like, what is this dude up to? Clowns freak us out in a similar way that dolls do. Something that's not quite human, but kinda, and it's off-putting. It makes us feel really unsettled and like we don't know what to expect. So the duality between the humor and the mayhem provides a satisfying feeling for horror fans who love the franchise. Whatever supernatural shit that surrounds him can spread to others, as we see with Vicky. While the lore has been expanded in Terrifier 2, I'm stoked about 3. I want to see if we get more information or not. But like I said, I'm cool either way. If we're looking at the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise versus the Terrifier franchise, of course they're very different. They have different experiences. Terrifier's a baby compared to Nightmare on Elm Street. But one thing I think is unique that I love about the Terrifier franchise that is not something that we see in Nightmare on Elm Street is the consistency and continuity. I'm not saying there's not some consistency and continuity, but what I'm saying is it's not the same group of people that were behind every single one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. It switched some hands. Whereas with Terrifier, same person behind it all, and it makes the story just flow right into the next one. It's beautiful. One thing about horror is that it has to continue in its development. Like, we can only do the same stuff so many times. Horror fans are sensation seeking, and you become very desensitized to some of the material. It feels to me that the creators of the Terrifier franchise are aware of that and are like, how many boundaries can we push? But while still keeping it fun. From the use of guns by Art, which I think reflects significantly on American culture, but I'm not diving into that one because I live in Kentucky. Anything that sounds vaguely threatening to gun culture is like fighting words. And then the extremes of Art's violence, like we see in the bedroom scene. It just keeps going, and you're like, oh my god, like he's got to stop at some point. And then nope, salt and bleach. Anyway, this is to expand on some of my old content, which is exclusively available on my Patreon. Thank you, patrons. In addition, we see Sienna as the final girl in Terrifier 2. I feel like it was nice and appropriately timed, because in Terrifier, the final girl trope is messed with. Tara is done for. Vicky is something else. We know what happened to Dawn. Sienna serves as more of a classic final girl, with a troubled and traumatic past and clear trauma-related mental health issues, as evidenced by dreams, hypervigilance, and a series of other emotional disturbances that we witness. But the big boys prior to this were almost all established before my time, or really early in my life, so this feels different. I get to watch it unfold in its entirety, and I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. I love it, and I'm here for it. Psychologically, it is different. It has some elements of some of our previous horror villains that have a little bit of personality, a little bit of like, haha, I'm gonna toy with you, but it goes deeper, and it's unique in a lot of ways. Not saying there's not other killer clowns, but there's not killer clowns like Art. I do want to dedicate this one to my fellow sensation-seeking friends in the Art the Clown Appreciation Society on Facebook. The link below. It's really cool because the people who are involved in the movie are also like there, which I think is also another really interesting and unique thing that I think will continue to further the Terrifier franchise, is that they're very involved with their audience and they know them very well. So I think some people are really off-put by this because the violence is a little over the top. But like I said, I mean, what are you supposed to do? There's only so many implied kills that you can do in horror. Horror fans aren't going to take to it anymore. Just because of the controversy surrounding the amount of gore and violence in movies, I like to throw out a little reminder to everyone that people are terrible and have always been terrible. And this is just a reflection of the violence they're capable of committing against one another. I don't see it as some like pervasive pattern of, oh my God, we're just going to get worse and worse, and then everybody's going to be cutting up people like Allie in the bedroom scene. That's stupid. Don't say stuff like that. Gore and violence are a plot device in this. They get you further. They develop the fear, the, oh no, somebody's head's going to get blown off. It's like Art's a little kid, and and everybody's his toys, his little playthings. As stated, this is my opinion. If you're not into it, you're not into it. You can fight with other Terrifier fans down below, because I'm not going to do it. And because I wear this makeup all the time, I'm going to mention Creature Cosmetics again. I'm going to include a link below in their Terrifier palette, which has made my eyeshadow very golden this time. It is the shade Sienna we see here. Check them out. Got some really cool stuff. Not sponsoring. It's with the Terrifier franchise. Shit. Fuck, man. What are you doing? Damn it. Okay, well those are just gonna have to be too close to each other, I guess. Ugh. Don't have very good tape holding the sign, so we'll see what happens.